48 hours. That's all it took for a young woman's life to be erased. In less than 2 days, she went from spending time with someone she trusted to being discovered in a shallow grave miles away from home. A quiet Washington neighborhood, a boyfriend who seemed ordinary, and a disappearance that escalated at a pace no one could comprehend. Friends searched, family called, police scrambled for answers. Yet before anyone could fully understand what was happening, the outcome was already irreversible. How could a relationship turn so quickly into tragedy? What happened inside those hours that no one saw? And why was the person closest to her the very one accused of taking her life? Tonight, we retrace every moment of those 48 hours. The unanswered calls, the frantic search, the shocking discovery, and the chilling truth about how love, trust, and safety disappeared in a single weekend. She was young, full of life, and known for her warmth. To her family, she was someone who lit up every room she walked into. To her friends, she was the one who listened, who cared, who made plans for the future. She lived in Washington, in a community where neighbors still left their doors unlocked, where families believed nothing this horrific could ever touch them. But in the final days of her life, everything changed. She was last seen with her boyfriend, the person who should have been her protector. Their relationship, at least on the surface, seemed like so many others. Photos on social media showed smiles, embraces, and what looked like happiness. Yet within 2 days, she would be gone and buried in the ground. This was not a random crime. It wasn't the work of a stranger lurking in the shadows. The investigation would reveal that the danger came from within her closest circle. And once the truth was uncovered, the speed of the crime and the attempt to cover it would leave even seasoned investigators stunned. This is the story of a love that turned into a tragedy. And to understand what happened, we must step back into those final hours when everything seemed ordinary until it wasn't. She grew up surrounded by people who loved her. Friends described her as the one who never forgot a birthday, the one who always stayed a little longer after a conversation, making sure you were truly okay. She had plans for the future, career goals, dreams of traveling, and a deep bond with her family. Her parents often said she had a way of bringing calm into a room, even during the most stressful times. But like many young adults, she was also searching for connection, for love. And when she met him, it seemed, at first, like she had found it. He wasn't a stranger to her circle. He was someone who appeared stable, attentive, and committed. They shared moments that, on the surface, painted the picture of a normal couple. Dinners, small getaways, public displays of affection. On social media, the smiles seemed genuine. To outsiders, there was nothing to fear. Behind closed doors, though, the picture wasn't as perfect. There were whispers of arguments, accounts of jealousy, and moments where friends noticed her withdrawing slightly from the group. At times, she confided that she felt overwhelmed, that he could be controlling, though she often brushed it off as normal relationship ups and downs. Family members later recalled moments where she seemed hesitant, as though she wanted to say more but chose silence instead. Still, she stayed with him, perhaps out of hope that things would improve, or maybe because it felt easier to hold on than to let go. For many, it was impossible to imagine that this relationship could end with a crime, so fast, so devastating. As the days leading to her final moments unfolded, everything seemed routine. She texted friends, made casual plans, and spent time with her boyfriend. No one suspected these would be her last hours alive. No one imagined that within 2 days of being with the man she trusted, her life would be taken and her body hidden in the earth. The question that haunts this story isn't just what happened, it's how it happened so quickly and why the warning signs weren't enough to stop it. The last 48 hours of her life began like any other. Friends say she was in good spirits. She texted, made calls, and even spoke about things she was looking forward to in the coming week. There was no sign of fear in her voice, no hint that danger was closing in. On the first evening, she was with her boyfriend. They were seen together, spending time like countless other couples in Washington. To anyone watching, it looked normal, even ordinary. But as night turned into morning, the first cracks began to show. Her phone, usually active, suddenly went quiet for stretches of time. Friends sent messages that went unanswered. A missed call here, a delayed response there. Small details, but enough to cause unease. One friend would later recall thinking, it wasn't like her to go silent. By the next day, concern grew. She failed to show up for a plan she had already confirmed. Family members tried calling. Again, no response. Hours slipped by and still nothing. The silence was deafening. Her boyfriend's behavior during this time would later raise even more questions. Witnesses described him as distant, nervous, even avoidant. Instead of joining in the search or offering clear answers, he seemed to pull back, leaving a trail of inconsistencies. That night, less than 48 hours since she was last seen alive, the truth could no longer be ignored. She had vanished. And, within a short drive from where she was last seen, the first signs of a hurried attempt to cover something unthinkable were already in motion. Detectives would later piece together movements, locations, and actions that painted a chilling picture. While loved ones were searching, while her name was being spoken in frantic calls and desperate social media posts, her life had already been taken and her body concealed in the earth. Every missing persons case carries urgency, but this one was different. The timeline moved at a speed that stunned investigators. In less than 2 days, she was gone and buried. It didn't take long before her disappearance drew the attention of law enforcement. Family members reported her missing, their voices strained with worry. Officers began canvassing the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking questions. Flyers were printed, her photos shared online. The words missing spread quickly across Washington communities. At first, there was hope that she might have simply gone off for a short trip, that she would come home with an explanation. But the longer the silence stretched, the more that hope began to fracture. Detectives soon turned their focus to the one person who had been with her last, her boyfriend. His account of the hours after she was last seen didn't match up. Details shifted. His timeline seemed fractured. Small inconsistencies began to build into larger questions. Why couldn't he provide a clear story? Why wasn't he actively searching alongside the family? The pressure mounted. Investigators began to track his movements, combing through surveillance footage, phone records, and any evidence that could reveal where he had gone in those crucial hours. What they uncovered was alarming. Travel to an isolated area, purchases that made no sense for an ordinary weekend, and signs of hurried behavior. Then came the moment that shattered the community. In a secluded patch of ground, hidden beneath disturbed soil, officers discovered what they feared the most. The shallow grave was hastily made, but it was enough to conceal the truth. Until now. Word spread quickly. Local news stations broke the story. Neighbors gathered in disbelief, and friends collapsed in grief. She had not simply disappeared. She had been taken, her life ended, and her body hidden just miles from where she was last seen. Detectives at the scene were struck by the speed of it all. 48 hours from life to death, from a missing person report to the grim discovery of her grave. The sheer rapidity left even seasoned officers shaken. And as the news reached her family, the weight of it became unbearable. The search was over, but the nightmare was only beginning. With the grim discovery of her body, the case shifted from a missing person search to a full homicide investigation. Detectives now had one mission: to find out who was responsible and how such a brutal act could unfold in less than 2 days. They began with the obvious suspect, the boyfriend. His story, already filled with gaps, came under sharper scrutiny. Every word he spoke was tested against the evidence. His phone records told one story, while his statements told another. Surveillance footage captured him driving along roads leading toward the area where her body was found. Purchases made with his card, tools, supplies, items investigators believed were used to prepare for concealment, painted a chilling picture. Forensic teams examined the shallow grave itself. Soil samples, fibers, and DNA were carefully collected. On her body, marks revealed a violent struggle. These were not the signs of an accident. They told a story of rage, control, and intent. Meanwhile, digital evidence mounted. Text messages showed tension between them in the days leading up to the crime. Searches on his devices raised red flags. Queries about hiding locations, disposal methods, and attempts to erase his tracks. Detectives interviewed friends, family, and neighbors. Many remembered hearing arguments, noticing changes in her behavior, or witnessing his controlling tendencies. What had once seemed like ordinary relationship quarrels now appeared as warning signs of something far darker. The weight of the evidence pressed heavily against him. Investigators had more than suspicion. They had proof that tied him directly to the scene, to the timeline, and ultimately to her death. But still, one question lingered. Why? What could drive someone to such lengths so quickly against a person they claimed to love? Was it jealousy, anger, or the need for control? Detectives and prosecutors began piecing together a psychological profile, one that would soon be tested in the courtroom. And as the case grew stronger, the community watched closely. A boyfriend had become the prime suspect. But could the evidence hold up under the weight of trial? With the evidence mounting, investigators made their move. The boyfriend was arrested, taken into custody under suspicion of murder. The community that once knew him as her partner now saw him in a different light, not as the grieving loved one, but as the man accused of taking her life. News cameras followed as he was led away in handcuffs. His expression gave little away. No tears, no visible remorse, only the silent gaze of someone now facing the full weight of the law. In the courtroom, the details came to life piece by piece. Prosecutors laid out the timeline, the final text messages, the silence that followed, the rushed purchases, and the shallow grave. Each fact struck like a hammer. Every new detail pushed the jury closer to a single conclusion. The defense tried to create doubt. They suggested alternate theories, spoke of emotional outbursts rather than calculated intent, and questioned whether the evidence truly proved premeditation. But the weight of the case was heavy. Surveillance footage, digital records, and forensic proof all pointed in one direction. Witnesses testified, friends, neighbors, even experts in forensic psychology. Each testimony added layers of clarity, painting the picture of a relationship marked by control and jealousy, one that escalated into violence. The jury listened in silence, their expressions tightening as the evidence unfolded. For the victim's family, every day in court was agony. They sat quietly, clutching photographs of the young woman they had lost, their eyes fixed on the man they once welcomed into their lives. The reality was almost too much to bear. The betrayal, the violence, the speed of it all. And then came the verdict. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The courtroom stood still as the decision was read aloud. Guilty. He was sentenced to years behind bars, his freedom stripped away, his future sealed inside prison walls. For many, it was justice. But for her family, no sentence could erase the pain. Her daughter was gone, her life stolen in just 48 hours. The child had given them answers, but not closure. The verdict may have closed the courtroom chapter, but for those left behind, the pain never ended. Her family spoke of a life cut short, of birthdays that would never be celebrated, of holidays forever marked by absence. They remembered her laughter, her dreams, her warmth, and how suddenly all of it was taken away. Friends struggled with the reality too. Many asked themselves whether they had missed the signs, whether there was something they could have said or done that might have saved her. Survivors of similar experiences reached out, sharing their own stories of control, jealousy, and fear, stories that echoed her own, warning of how easily love can become dangerous. The community where she lived changed. What was once seen as a safe and quiet place now carried the weight of tragedy. Vigils were held, candles flickering in the night, as neighbors stood shoulder to shoulder, grieving together. The image of her face, once a missing person photo, became a symbol of loss and a call for awareness. Advocates for domestic violence prevention spoke out, reminding the public that this was not an isolated case. Behind closed doors, in countless relationships, signs of control and aggression often go unnoticed until it's too late. Her story became part of a larger conversation, one about recognizing the warning signs and protecting those who may be in danger. For her family, healing was slow. Some days carried unbearable silence. Others brought fleeting comfort in memories. They vowed to keep her legacy alive, to ensure she would never be forgotten. But the shadow of what happened remained, a reminder that in just 48 hours, a life full of promise was horridly cut short. In the end, the evidence was clear, the verdict was final, and the sentence was handed down. But long after the trial ended, questions still lingered. Why did this happen so quickly? What turned arguments and jealousy into a crime that ended a life in less than 2 days? Was it premeditated, or did a moment of rage spiral into something irreversible? Psychologists who studied the case pointed to control, obsession, and possessiveness, traits that often hide in plain sight until it is too late. They remind us that violence in relationships rarely comes without warning. The patterns are there, the jealousy, the isolation, the sudden outbursts. Yet too often, those signals are brushed aside, explained away, or hidden beneath the surface. For investigators, the timeline remains one of the most haunting elements. 48 hours. The speed, the precision, the cold attempt to conceal. It was as though the crime was carried out not just with the violence, but with the chilling urgency to erase her existence. For her family, the unanswered questions will never fade. They may know how she died, but they may never understand why. And perhaps that is the heaviest burden of all, living with the knowledge that love, trust, and safety were betrayed in the most devastating way possible. Her story forces us to confront the fragility of human relationships, the hidden dangers that can exist behind closed doors, and the terrifying truth that sometimes the greatest threat comes from the person we trust the most. Her life ended in just 48 hours, but her story will be remembered far longer. A daughter, a friend, a young woman with dreams, taken by the very person she trusted most. The investigation uncovered the truth, the trial delivered justice, but nothing could ever replace what was lost. This case is more than just a headline. It's a reminder of how quickly danger can emerge, how fragile trust can be, and how important it is to recognize the warning signs before tragedy strikes. Her memory lives on, not only in the hearts of those who loved her, but in the awareness her story brings to others. If you've been moved by this documentary, we ask you to honor her by staying aware, by looking out for those around you, and by remembering that behind every statistic is a life, a family, and a future cut short. Thank you for watching. If you want to hear more true stories that uncover the hidden truths behind crimes that shook communities, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And in our next documentary, we'll examine another case that left investigators stunned, a story where the search for answers led to revelations no one expected. Until then, remember, awareness can save lives, and sometimes the truth is closer than we think.